Morning, everybody, and welcome to Living Astrology with Janet. It's time to grab your cup of coffee or your tea, sit back and relax while we chat about what is happening up in the stars above for today, October 17th, and of course for the weekend ahead. It's great to be back. I feel like it's been forever, and in fact, it probably has been because I think the last time I was on air was actually Friday, October 3rd, right before I left to go on my vacation down to visit my brother, who I'd never met, and a sister-in-law that I'd not met. And by the way, that was a fantastic visit. um, for those of you who've been with me for a long time, you know this odyssey that I have been on since about 2017, I guess it was, when I found all of these siblings, and they're half siblings. I have one full sibling and about 14 half siblings, right? And it's been amazing as I've met each of these people. A couple of them had passed away before I was able to meet them, but nonetheless, I got to know them through the other siblings. And it's been sort of an odyssey for me, right? Meeting these people and seeing, building, I guess, relationships with them that I would never have expected to be able to build. As for most of my life, I had no idea that I had these many siblings. I suspected, but I had no idea for sure. So that was a great vacation. I spent time with my full-blooded sister as well. And that was a great visit. And then, of course, just being able to relax away from work. And I didn't realize how tired I was really from all the work that I do. And it doesn't seem like my work is very tiring. It's a lot of brain work, right? A lot of mental work. And when I got back, we got back on Sunday, I guess it was, and Terry's birthday was on Monday. So we took that day off. And so I really actually started back to work on Tuesday. And I had so much to do, right? I had 3 webinars to prepare. I had clients to prepare for. I have this broadcast to prepare for. I had meetings. It was just kind of crazy. But I realized how much clarity I had during each of those processes that I might have gotten bogged down in if I was doing that before having taken that little trip. So bottom line, vacations are good for you. And then, of course, this morning starts out in this magical sort of way. First of all, I was up early, got everything prepared on time pretty much. And then this friend of mine, Terry Strauss, who you guys have seen here on my show before, she is a medium. And she reached out to me for the first time in several weeks. I mean, I think it was September was the last time we actually chit-chatted. And she didn't know this, but today is my son Brian's birthday, my son who died back in 2021. And I had reached out to our family this morning and said, "Happy birthday, Brian." I said, first of all, I hope you guys don't think this is dumb, but I want to say happy birthday to Brian. Today would have been his 34th birthday. And of course, the whole family's like, "No, that's not dumb, Mom. That's not dumb, right? Oh, we love Brian. We miss Brian, blah, blah, blah." Well, then Terry reaches out to me. And she has no idea that it's Brian's birthday, but she starts bringing me messages from Brian. And they were messages that were spot on. Like she would have no way of knowing what it is that we have been talking about as a family, or what's going on. So I knew in my heart that it was Brian reaching out and saying, "Yes, I'm still here." So it was wonderful. And Terry, now I see you're out there in the crowd. Thank you so much. You just don't know what those messages mean to us when you bring them, and especially when they happen like that, where you just know there's some other hand, some other magic, some mystical thing going on. Anyway, so thank you very much for that. And thank you all for joining me this morning. I have quite a bit to talk about, but I need to go backwards in time a titch, because while I was gone, Pluto turned direct. It actually turned direct on Terry's birthday, not this Terry, but my Terry's birthday. And I know we probably mentioned it at some point, but I wanted to bring that up today because it's a big turning point when an outer planet like Pluto does that turning of his direction. Now, literally, he's not turning, but from our perspective here on Earth, things are changed because a planet like Pluto has changed direction. When he is in retrograde motion, he is working to transform the collective, basically, but also us as individuals from the inside. Now that he is moving in direct motion again, he will be moving us and changing us in a much more visible way over the next several months. He won't retrograde again. I think it is until May of 2026. So we have several months now of his presence in our life. And as a transformer, he really brings the changes, right? He brings up the detritus, the uglies, the things that, are not sustainable anymore, or that don't work anymore, or that are broken down, and asks us to rebuild those things or to reconstruct. So those kinds of things will be the actions that we begin to see in the outer world. And of course, he's in Aquarius. Aquarius, a sign of the future. So we're building a future, right? What does that future look like? Well, right now it's hard to tell because things are wonky, they're upside down, they're difficult, they're unpredictable. Thanks to Uranus, they're unpredictable, not necessarily Pluto. But Pluto here playing this card of, if you're going to build a future, it needs to be sustainable and it needs to be something that all of humanity can resonate with. So while Pluto stations direct, it's like the universe is releasing the emergency brake. And now we're, ready to roll. And all the inner work and the transformation from the inside that we've been working with since May, when he began his retrograde, are now, things that we'll begin to see change for us in that outer world. And, as well in Aquarius, Pluto is reshaping our relationship to power and our relationship to freedom and innovation and technology. And, you have to admit, we've seen a lot of technological advances, in particular in AI and, the digital currency world, that type of thing. But on a soul level, this revolution energy isn't just a revolution for the sake of it, and it's not rebellion for the sake of rebellion either. It's about reform. It's about renewal and rewriting the systems that have outlived their purpose. And on top of that, you might recall we talked about the fact that Pluto is also out of bounds, right? Up through November 15th, I think it is, he is in a very southern declination. Declination meaning his relationship to the sun, the center of our solar system. And when any planet is out of bounds, it is untethered to the sun, meaning its expression can be more extreme and can be more unexpected even. And Pluto, of course, with this transformation energy, has moved into that southern declination, which is called reform. So we're in a reform mode. So if you've felt the pressure to liberate yourself from control or from manipulation or outdated roles that you've played, then that's Pluto doing his job in your chart or in your life, breaking up what no longer serves your evolution. And what I would say is to take a look at where Aquarius is in your astrology chart. I'm going to add my chart to the stage here this morning so we can see. So Aquarius is down at the bottom, circled there. You'll see Pluto at about 1 degree, 22 minutes, it looks like, of Aquarius. So if this chart was a person, this person's revolution would be going on in the house of home and family, traditions, foundations, ancestral lineage. So that would be where the biggest transformation is happening in, if this were a person. And of course, there are 12 houses, 12 places that this could be happening in your life. So take a look now at where it is in your chart The house tells you the where things are happening. So, for example, let's say it was in your first house. It would be very personal, right? There would be personal transformations going on. Maybe you change your style, maybe you change your look, your hair, your makeup, your dress. It would be very personal transformations that you're going through. The work that you do, whatever it is that you identify with, would be in transformation. And if you don't know what house it's in, get your chart from me. Go to my website, living-astrology.com, and request your astrology chart. And by the way, you can make your own now on my website. I don't know if you guys knew that. You can get your own human design chart for you and your family members. You can get your own astrology chart for you and your family members. So try that out one of these days if you want to. Now, when we look at human design, we're going to do that for just a minute. So let me take this away for a momento, and then I'll come back to it for the rest of the broadcast. But when we look at human design, in human design, Pluto is sitting long-term at the gate 60. Now, the gate 60 is on the root center, and actually I can share my screen here so you can see what that looks like as well. And I'm sorry to kind of go back and forth a little bit this morning, but some things just are never in a straight line. And that's today, right? The conversation can't be in a straight line. So if we look down here at the bottom, this is the root center. And the root center is, first of all, he's sitting at the gate 60. So in blue here, I've got the gate 60 highlighted. And the gate 60 is called the gate of limitation in traditional human design. But in quantum human design, I think it takes on some new energy, and it's called conservation. And that shift in the language is very important, right? It's important for a couple of reasons. But for one reason, it teaches us that limits, when we used the word limits, it felt like punishment, didn't it? Right. I always think of limits as punishment. I remember being a little kid and not being able to go out in the front yard to play with all my friends. I had to stay in the backyard. And those limits felt confining, and they felt like punishments, right? Because I was too little or too young or whatever, my parents had in their heads about it. Yet, if we look at it as conservation, then what Pluto at gate 60 becomes is a container for creation, right? For those very changes and transformations that we must make in order to be able to create a new world, to transform the world into a much more sustainable creation. So think of it like a seed, right? Even though it's called limitation, no matter what you call it, even conservation could be looked at as difficulty. But if we think of it as a seed without the shell of limitation, then the seed couldn't germinate, right? If the seed had the shell on it all the time, it wouldn't be able to germinate. So Pluto is at this gate is really asking us, what structures in our lives do we have to actually keep because it's good for growth? But which limitations are we also ready to transform or release or turn into strengths, right? So as we look at where Pluto is right now, it's at the gate 60, but it's also in the line 6. Now, remember, in human design, there are 6 lines. And think of the gate 60 as a highway. And then there are 6 lanes on this highway. And each one of those lanes modifies the energy of that gate. So when we have the line 6, which is a line that is about being a role model, a leader, right? This represents wisdom and perspective. So Pluto in the gate 60 in the line 6 is giving us a new idea of wisdom and perspective on leadership, right? So this is the leadership by example line. So where is it that you're embodying discipline and maturity and living within natural limits? Treating, everything that you do as a container for your passions and for what it is that you want to share with the world. And when you do this, you inspire others to find empowerment through patience and endurance. Put a pin in that word, because that word also becomes important in the work that we're doing this week. So Pluto, now direct in gate 60 in Aquarius, is about evolutionary leadership energy. Now, you're not meant to bulldoze the limits, right? We're not meant to break the container and bust out in unsustainable ways, but we're meant to work with those limits consciously, work within the confines of the container, right? And you're refining and you're restructuring, and you're doing that with your energy and your time and your resources, so money even, right? Pluto here says true freedom comes from integrity and responsibility. So when you conserve your power instead of scattering it, you become a force of regeneration for yourself and for others, which is, the name of the game. And you do that personally and collectively. So it's a very important time that we find ourselves at. And by the way, that began on Monday. And Pluto, so powerful in the grand scheme of things, this is energy that will probably shift and shake us up for at least the next couple of weeks before things begin to smooth out and we see the impact of those Pluto transformations in the outer world. So ask yourself a couple of questions here, in reflection of what is happening. Where have you been feeling restricted? And could that actually be guiding you towards some kind of mastery in your life? Is it pointing you in a certain direction, at a certain outcome? And then maybe what structure or boundary do you need to honor to create something that's lasting? And interesting, because I'm seeing even with members of my own family and a couple of friends too, where boundaries have become so important, right? The boundaries that say, okay, this is my container. This is what is going to help me thrive. This is what's going to help me do the things that I need to do or what I want to do. So the container is very important, right? And then lastly, how can you lead by example in how you handle change? What does that look like? How can you become the leader in your own life around the things that are changing? Because every day things are changing, right? It's like the thing that we expect, right? Change, it's always there. So as Pluto begins moving forward again, we're reclaiming in some ways the courage to act on the changes that we've been processing, not only through this summertime where we had Pluto in retrograde, but from the beginning of the year, even from the beginning of his transit through Aquarius, right? When he finally landed in Aquarius for the next 20 years. So now we have other things to look at, right? I hope you understand everything about Pluto. Let me look at questions and comments here and see what we got going on. Let's say good morning to Nahid. Great to have you with us this morning. J Lo, happy Friday to you. Amanda J, good morning. Amy D, good morning. So glad you had a great trip and also happy you are back. Kamal, good to have you with us too. Thank you, Amy, for that. That was awesome. Teddy, good morning. J-Lo says, brain work is very tiring. And I'm a Gemini with a Virgo moon. I have a lot of analytical mind energy running through me all the time. Terry Strauss, good to have you with us. Kamal says, Janet, can you please relate the ongoing market crash under the astrological movements? I guess it would be something related to Pluto. Likely, you are right, but also Venus, the same day that Pluto went to direct motion, Venus moved into Libra. Libra, a sign ruled by Venus. She is an empowered Venus. And while Libra is mostly about relationships, it also is about harmony and balance and equality. And where things are out of balance, we have to work to bring them into balance. Now, I hadn't really noticed that there was a market issue going on, to be frank, Kamal, but I now will take a look at that and see what's going on, because I'm really not so sure what it is that you're talking about. Is it something global? Is it something that's happening in the part of the world you live in? I don't know for sure. If anybody else has any insight to that, go ahead and please, let me know. But I would relate it to a couple of things. First off, because we also have a ton of planetary energy going on in Scorpio. Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, but also Mars. And we have then catalyzing energy of transformational nature. Right now we have Mercury in Scorpio, we have Mars in Scorpio, and we have the black moon Lilith in Scorpio. So that could be changing up some things too. But I think, of all of the planetary energies, when Pluto changes direction, the beginning of the change in the outer world begins with what is no longer sustainable. So if there's something about the economy, something about, the financial world that isn't sustainable, of which none of it is sustainable, I would argue, then we're going to see breakdowns. We're going to see, change ups there as well. And love you too, Terry Strauss, Amanda J. I can't see what that symbol is, but I'm assuming it's a good one. And we all miss Brian. Thank you, Kamal. Christine, oh, wow, glad to see you back. Teddy, where is your headphones? So, that's a great question, Teddy J, because I'm tired of wearing my headphones. I'm tired of my ears being squished. I'm tired of running into the microphone all the time. So I decided I wasn't going to do that. So you guys tell me, is the sound okay? Are you hearing my heaters running in the background? Because I asked somebody else yesterday about that while I was doing a reading with them, and they couldn't hear it. So I'm hoping it's not showing up in the video feed here for you either. And Nahid says, happy birthday, Brian. Thank you. My daughter's birthday, she turns 20. Oh my gosh, J-Lo, that's awesome. And now you have a birthday twin for Brian. If you guys could see my calendar, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 birthdays in the family this month. It's crazy, right? Everybody was born in October because we all know what people were doing in February. All right. Teddy, happy heavenly birthday, Brian. Yeah, that's awesome. And it was 11/11. And Nahid has Pluto in the 8th house in Scorpio, conjunct Venus and Mars. Goodness, Nahid. So your life is really sort of this model of transformation. It would be interesting to have a conversation with you one day about the things that have happened in your life around death and rebirth, and about regeneration and finances, things, of the 8th house nature. Sandra, hi to you. Mistel, good morning to you. J-Lo has Pluto in the 5th in Libra. So we have different generations here, by the way. So each one of you who has Pluto, say in Libra, you're of a generation that, had come to transform Libran ideals, diplomacy, relationships, love and harmony and all of that. The Pluto in Scorpio generation, a few of you out there, I'm sure as well, listen to my broadcast, and you're here to be transformers. You're almost lightning rods for change. And that's a part of a generation of you, a 10 to 15 year group of people, all born with the same thing. I'm part of the Pluto and Virgo generation. And then I'm sure we have, Pluto in, let's see, after Scorpio would have been the Pluto and Sag generation. They'd be a little bit younger. But every generation of Plutoans have a role to play in the transformation and evolution of life on this planet. Sound is great, Christine says. Woohoo! So I don't have to wear my headset. I used to have to wear it because where I lived before, they all had landscapers that would come. And I swear they all came to on Mondays and Fridays when I was doing my broadcast. And I couldn't hear myself think. So I started wearing headsets. So it's good to know that I don't have to do that. Amy doesn't sound much different than usual. Awesome. Christine has Pluto in Virgo retrograde in the 5th house. Now, I would guarantee you that a good percentage of you have Pluto retrograde in your natal charts, because Pluto spends 5 months a year in retrograde. So chances are you were born in a time where it was retrograde, which means that you're on this planet and often finding yourself having to transform on the inner planes. Right? It's not so much that you're a transformer in the outer world, although I wouldn't say that you're not a transformer in that way. But most of the time you are transforming and evolving your own soul in a way that's pretty profound, right? Those retrogrades mean, we're going back inward to live out the evolutionary cycle of Pluto. And by the way, Pluto in your chart is an evolutionary marker, right? So the planets that it might be in relationship with. Also, mark your evolutionary path and the sign, of course, the house, of course. And that's something that we take a look at in the soul coaching program that I have been running now, teaching people about what your soul's evolutionary path is all about. J-Lo, my unconscious is direct, so I give Delulu a new name. Terry, hers is in Aquarius, 9th house, transforming power. Transforming power. Now, I'm thinking that you're thinking of the transiting Aquarius, right? Because you would not have been born with Pluto in Aquarius. And if Aquarius is on your 9th house, Terry, then what you're transforming is this energy of expansion and growth, reaching a bigger audience, right? Being seen more frequently, being more authentically and uniquely you. So that's what is happening in your case. Christine says, that makes sense. All right, so let's go on to Venus in Libra. Even though that happened on Monday, she immediately, as she moved into Libra, came into an opposition with Neptune that is in the sign of Aries, sitting at the very edge. Let's see, today Neptune is at 0 degrees, 0.07 minutes of Aries. So he is very, and he's retrograde. So he's so close to moving backward into the sign of Pisces to finish what he started there back in 2011. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, on Monday. When Venus is back home in her own signs, it's an empowerment kind of move for her, right? For any planet that moves into the sign of its rulership. And in the sign of Libra, it's about love and beauty and balance and harmony and relationships and partnerships, right? And whenever she returns to one of the signs she rules, both Taurus and Libra, her voice gets stronger. And she wants peace. She wants grace. She wants connection. But on her terms, right? This isn't just, forcing things to happen, because that's not what Venus in Libra does. She reminds us that love is about giving endlessly. It's not, let me rephrase that. Love isn't about just giving love endlessly. It's about reciprocity, but it's also about truth, right? There's this equality in what it is that we give and then what it is that we receive, right? It has to be in balance and harmony. That is what Venus seeks. So she's seeking balance in beauty. She's seeking harmony in those things. And Venus in Libra has a gift for diplomacy and for seeing every side of a situation like a diamond, right? Every facet. A Libran can really see these different phases. And she brings grace in the way that we relate to one another, right? And how we establish relationships, but how we also work within established relationships. Now, that can be relationships that, are familial. It can be your significant other. It can be in your business partnerships, business collaborations, and things like that. But also how you relate to yourself, right? Involves this planet. Her question is this relationship or this situation truly in balance? Is it truly harmonizing? Do both sides seem like they're valued, respected, right? Those are questions that Venus would bring to the table. So this is a good time to mend fences if you have, a broken relationship, to smooth out the rough edges in any of your relationships. Libra energy seeks peace. It's all about peace. And anything that's felt out of balance or disjointed in some way, this is a great time to bring those things into a harmony. And this is important, it's not about avoiding conflict, right? Libra can do this, right? It can just gloss over the top and, not necessarily do the deeper dive work. Libra energy seeks peace, but we need an authentic peace. Not one that's just like putting lipstick on a pig. That won't work, right? That we need the kind that requires us to be our true authentic selves, not the kind that requires us to silence our truth to fit in, or to be something that we're not, right? So there is something very important to remember. Your truth and your authentic self isn't about just placating and compromising. It's about a genuine relationship where we can balance each other, right? Now, in the opposition to Neptune, remember Neptune is the higher octave of Venus. Venus rules love and harmony and peace and so forth at the relationship level, but Neptune rules unconditional love, universal love, right? So spiritual love meets earthly love, right? With these two. Now they're in opposition, so we're being pulled in two different directions. And this is where things get a little foggy because Neptune can veil the reality that we're living. It can cause us to just not see what it is that's going on in our relationships with clarity. And it can make it hard for us to tell whether what we're feeling is true or simply wishful thinking. So we have to really slow ourselves down in our relationships a bit to be able to see clearly. And, in our relationships, this may show up for us as projecting our ideals outward onto others, seeing what you hope is there instead of what is really there. So it can also bring deep compassion, though, and empathy for and sympathy for our fellow humans. Creativity can be expanded during this time as well, but we have to stay grounded in truth. Always have to stay grounded in truth. So the energy feels something like this. Venus says, I want connection, harmony, and beauty. Neptune says, I want transcendence, soul union, and unconditional love. But together they ask us, can you love what's real, not just what's imagined? So, boom. There we have that. That started our week, by the way. And I would say, Venus today is still at about 4 degrees of Libra, and Neptune at 0 degrees. They're still within orb, meaning this energy is still with us, right? It's not lost on us yet. Now, there's this mirror of self-awareness going on with this whole thing as well. Oppositions always ask us for balance. And this one mirrors how our inner world of dreams and ideals meets that outer world of true human relationships, right? In the ideal world, we get along famously, right? And we give and we receive and we have everything in balance and harmony. But human relationships are a lot messier than that, aren't they? Right? It's not so easy, right? Even the best and longest of relationships go through time periods where it's a little bit daunting, a little bit irritating. So it's a cosmic reminder for all of us that love begins with clarity. And that sometimes the most spiritual thing that you can do is to see someone or yourself for the truth of who they are, for the real them, the real you, flaws, truth, and all, right? And then still hold compassion, still hold love, hold acceptance. If you felt confused, if you felt disappointed or overly idealistic this week, this aspect is showing you where you need discernment, right? Where you have to bring more discernment into the game. Venus in Libra wants beauty with boundaries. Neptune in Aries tests whether you can hold your truth and still stay open-hearted and open-minded, right? It's a big deal. Okay. So now I wanted to take a look at, well, first of all, let's go back to our chart for a second here. I'm going to add it to the stage and then make this bigger so I can actually see it. All right, so here's Venus up here in the left side of the chart. She's sitting in Libra along with the part of fortune and also the sun. So the sun in the last 6 degrees or so of Libra. We're getting ready for a sign change, folks. And then the energy of Pluto down here at the bottom in Aquarius. I already showed you that part. And then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about the sun squaring Jupiter because that's actually activated today and through the weekend. But before we get there, I wanted to remind everybody that Venus in her transits through Libra and, following the sun and also having followed Mercury through these gates in our human design, put her in the gates of the spleen, which is where we have the energy for fear, and where we have this energy that we are in the process of transforming. So if we look at the chart here, this is the spleen right down here in the bottom left corner. And everything highlighted in magenta here is where Venus will be transiting. And I should have put it here too. I still can do that. Ha, we'll make it both colors. So Venus will be moving through all of the gates of the spleen. So, there might be this natural tendency for fear to pop up in your relationships, right? She brings heart energy wherever she goes, right? There's that. So as she moves through the spleen, she's going to add some softness, maybe some compassion to what can otherwise feel like fear-based territory, right? That's the key in the spleen. It's survival energy, but sometimes that survival energy becomes fear-based. And every one of the spleen gates holds a specific kind of fear. And that when that fear is transformed, it becomes a gift, right? So Venus's presence here helps you transform any fear that you have into love energy. And you're turning judgment into acceptance. You're turning self-protection into self-trust. So you may have noticed over the last couple of weeks, these different fears popping up because we had Mercury there. Then we've got the sun also transiting through the spleen. And now we have Venus transiting through the spleen. So you may feel this stronger intuitive hit about what feels safe or who feels safe and who doesn't and what doesn't. You may feel this urge to detox, right? She's come out of Virgo, the sign of purification. So maybe you're physically, emotionally, and relationship-wise going through a detox mode from what no longer feels clean, clear, and aligned to a more balanced and harmonious representation of who you are. So that's Venus cleaning house, right? She's coming through here, not just for beauty's sake, but for health and for harmony, right? That's the bigger gift that she leaves us moving through this. Now, Mercury's recent transit through the spleen energy here was about naming and understanding the fear, giving voice to the subtle signals that whisper, this doesn't feel right? This doesn't feel good. And the sun's passage now through all of these gates illuminates those same areas. And it shows us how fear is operating in our daylight life, right? In our life, and how wisdom emerges when you stay present in this moment instead of panicking, right? Stay present. That's the thing. The spleen operates in the now. And yes, I might be frightened of something that might happen in the future, because no future is assured. And that puts us out of the spleen energy because the spleen energy operates right here in this moment. So now that Venus is following behind Mercury and the sun, it's offering the healing and the grace that we need to allow the integration of the old fear-based energy into the new, fully courageous, brave selves that we are, the bold, courageous selves that we are. So she'll help you embody now what you've learned and trusting your intuition and learning, how to work with anxiety and how to not let anxiety run the show of your life. So where Mercury gave you the mental clarity and the sun is giving you this bright awareness, Venus will now give us the emotional healing and grace to truly embody that wisdom. So for everyone collectively, this Venus passage through Libra and through the spleen is this gentle and energetic, let's say, recalibration. Fear being replaced by understanding. Survival mode is giving way to conscious trust. And the heart is learning to work with the body's intuition rather than against it. So you might find that your relationships mirror some of this back to you and showing you where old fear patterns are still limiting intimacy, or where your body's signals are guiding you towards safer, more supportive connections with others. Because Venus says here, love is the guide, and it guides through your instincts. And then grace dissolves the fears, right? That is Venus moving through all of this. And then this brings us perfectly into this week's energies through human design, the sun and the earth gates that are activated Why did I do that? I stopped sharing my screen. That was bad timing on my part. Hold on. Let me go back. Share my screen. I'm sharing the wrong screen. Let's go to stop sharing again. And I don't want that one. I want this one. Sorry, guys. Operator error here. Share. But also, things are moving slow on this screen this morning. Like, it's not all quite working the same way. Okay, back to our screen. So the reason this gate here, 32, was in blue is because this is where our sun now sits. And the gate 32 is, in some respects, it's called the gate of endurance in quantum human design. In the traditional human design, we thought of this gate often as the fear of failure. And, there's a lot to be said about this particular gate, and we're going to dive into it. But its partner in all of this is the gate 42, which is on the sacral center. And this is called the gate of completion. And when we're working with completion, we're celebrating what we've come through, right? We're celebrating the end results, if you will. So this week, the sun illuminating gate 32, the gate of endurance, is about continuity and about duration, right? Duration, sticking with something. This energy lives in the spleen center, so we're still working with instinct and intuition and survival intelligence, if you will. But rather than reacting to fear, the gate 32 helps us persevere. It's about knowing what's worth sustaining, what's worth holding on to, what's worth sticking with, right? It's almost I'm going to stick with this because I have this vision, and at the end, I'm going to have success. But I might have challenges to go through, right? So we're persevering. The shadow here in the gate 32, or the gene key 32, is failure, right? It is the fear of not succeeding, of being judged for failing, of letting something die before it's ready. So it really has a very strong and powerful impact on us, given the outer world that we live in. And yet, when you move through the fear of the gate 32 consciously, you discover the gift, which is preservation. And it's the ability to hold on to what has true value in your life and to let go of what doesn't. And remember, part of the spleen's energy is sometimes holding on too long. And then at other times, not holding long enough, right? There's something to be said here about, staying so present that in every moment what is right to hold on to and what is right to let go of. At its highest frequency, this brings a new word to us, and it's veneration, reverence for the sacred cycles of life and death and endings and beginnings. So this week, the sun asks us what in our life is asking for more patience, for our enduring, right? For sticking with something. And where are you afraid of failing, right? And could that fear actually be guiding you toward wisdom, right? Because when you face the fear and you do it anyway, you conquer the fear, or at least bring peace to you with that fear. Now, Pluto moving direct this week also ties in beautifully here, because sometimes you have to honor the endings before the real transformation that has been required or requested can take root. And endurance isn't stubbornness. This is about devotion to what your soul knows is right, even when the outer world is wobbling, right? Which our outer world is wobbling because there's so much that's in change, all right? Now, if we go to the gate 42, where the earth is, now remember the sun and earth relationship. In human design, the sun shows us the highest and best of what's possible for us for the week. And the earth says, this is what you have to ground in order to get there. So the sun has its sights on something big. The earth says, feet on the ground, let's ground it in. So the earth grounds us in the gate 42 this week, which is located on the sacral center. The sacral center is the center of vitality and life force energy. It is an engine. It is always humming, right? A motor, let's say, it's always in motion. And this is the energy of completion, maturing or bringing something to a close, but also celebration in that closure. So it's the end of a cycle of energy, the knowing that when something is complete versus when you're just quitting, right? So it's a natural evolution that brings you to completion, not a leaping out of something because I have fear about failure. All right, I hope that makes sense. Now, the shadow of the gene key 42 is expectation. Such an interesting word to put here for this because it's holding on to what should happen. And then we resist closure because we don't note that that is the natural thing that should be going on or that is happening. Or we end up waiting for life to look a certain way before we feel satisfied because we have this expectation. So expectation can actually anchor us to the negative side of endurance and to sticking with things well beyond their use by date. The gift is detachment. So it's interesting to think of detachment as a gift, but it's the grace to let go and to trust that each chapter closes in perfect timing and that we don't need to force it to happen, right? We don't need to make it happen. And when we move to the Siddhi, the highest example here is celebration, right? The highest energy is about the celebration, not the kind that waits for perfection, but the kind that honors life itself and the messy, beautiful, unfolding path of growth, right? If we waited for everything to be perfect, it would be a moving target because we'd always feel like, oh, it's not that perfect yet, right? And a lot of the information that a lot of the energy that we experience in the spleen is about perfection seeking. It is about not noticing when the timing is right. So together, so while the sun is teaching endurance, sticking with the right things for the right amount of time, the earth reminds you that everything has its season. Holding on too tightly creates stagnation, and letting go at the right moment opens the doors to abundance. Right? That's this week's energy. So together they form this alchemy of endurance and completion for us. These two gates form this sort of sacred gateway this week. And they teach us that true endurance isn't about control. It's not about strangleholds on things. It's about the rhythm and the cycles, right? You endure through the process and you complete that process with grace. And if you've been pushing or striving or trying to make things happen, that's your cue to slow down and listen. Right? Let things mature in their own timing. Let endings be endings, right? Because that's what's on the other side of endurance and completion is renewal, right? And that's the quiet gift that's hidden inside this week's energy as the wisdom to trust life's timing so that we end up in renewal. All right. Now, so as Pluto's moved direct and Venus rebalancing in Libra, our hearts, and the sun and earth relationship this week are aligning us in these powerful gates, the message this week is pretty clear, or this weekend, let's say. Stay present. Honor the process, whatever process you're going through. Let fear transform into faith, right? Jump into faith. And then if we look ahead at this weekend's energy, the sun in Libra is squaring Jupiter in Cancer. And this is a transit that we really need to talk about because it brings expansion, it brings generosity, it brings a gentle reminder as well not to overdo it. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to change my screens here so that we can actually see the chart for this. So you'll see this green line up here on the top left, and at the bottom is the sun, and the sun is in 24 degrees, 27 minutes of Libra, and then Cancer is where Jupiter is right now at 24.08, so they're closing in. Jupiter is closing in on this square, or I should say the sun already closed in on the exact square. And um, this energy of the sun and Jupiter gets magnified because of Jupiter's presence here. It magnifies everything you're feeling. It in a way, it can bring friction, because that's what squares often do. It brings this, kind of feeling of needing to do something or needing to fix something. And this isn't energy that comes to punish us, but it creates movement, right? I think squares sometimes create such friction that we feel like if we stay, like we have to do something, right? We have to move. We have to get out of our own way. So we find ourselves taking action under squares, so that we can reduce the tension. We can reduce the anxiety. Now, the sun in Libra, on the Libran side of things here, wants balance and harmony and grace, right? Jupiter in Cancer wants emotional expansion, safety, nurturing, and in its own way, it brings this, foundation of safety and security along with it. And when you put the two together, the sun and Jupiter in Cancer, you might find yourself stretching between doing what feels right for everyone, but also honoring what feels right for you. That will be the square, like what's good for me and what's good for everyone. Now, there's a gift and a caution here. And the gift on the high side, let's start there. This is an incredibly optimistic energy. It's heart opening, even. It encourages generosity and connection and bold creative expression, right? Cancer, a creative sign. Libra, also a creative sign. You might feel inspired to start something new, to plan ahead, or to share your wisdom, right? That's the high side. But here's the caution. Jupiter can always exaggerate. It might be that you overcommit yourself, your time, your resources, your energy. Maybe you overindulge. If this little bit feels good, then I'm going to go with the bigger bit. And maybe even overestimate what's possible for you in the moment. So before you say yes to everything, pause, breathe, and ask, is this choice aligned with balance? And does it honor both my growth and my well-being? Because, we usually leave ourselves out of the equation more frequently than engaging ourselves in that conversation. So ask yourself, is this going to balance? This transit will really remind us that true abundance really flows from alignment, not excess, right? Not from overdoing. So this really becomes expanding ourselves with integrity, but not beyond it, right? It's kind of funny because last night I was attending, it was called Visibility something or another, 3 Keys to Visibility. It was a business sort of workshop. And at the end, of course, it was selling us on participating in this summit. And I didn't get much out of that, but I really saw where some of the conversation was about pushing people to excess, right? To being more than. And I realized, wow, they were even using the words like things like, saying yes to yourself, right? I'm not against saying yes to yourself, but you have to say yes to the right things. But they were almost making it sound like if you didn't say yes, then there was something wrong with you. And I feel like that's part of this week's energy as well, is that some people may be pushing you, or you may find yourself being, pushed or pushing others to say yes to something that maybe they're not ready for. And with a square from the sun to Jupiter, the being pushed can exaggerate that energy, or to, expand it too quickly, too far, too fast. And then you find yourself in a deficit energy-wise or resource-wise. So be wise, be careful. Now, if we put the energetic summary together for the weekend, Pluto direct says, step into your power consciously. Be consciously aware of what it is that you're transforming based on what's been awakened in you during the transit of Pluto in retrograde. Venus in Libra, opposite Neptune, says, see through the illusion to love, right? To the real love energy. The sun and the earth in the gate 32 sun, in the gate 42 earth, says, endure with grace and complete with gratitude, right? That gratitude from the heart. And then the sun Jupiter square says, yeah, grow, but stay balanced while you do it. So the overall message as we close today's broadcast is move forward, but with wisdom. Trust the unfolding process. Don't rush the bloom, right? We can't make the flower bloom any faster. And when we do, something usually happens, right? It's not quite right. It doesn't smell as sweet. It doesn't grow as strong. It doesn't last as long, right? So that's what we have for the weekend coming up, and also recapping a bit of what's going on this week. So let's take a look at what's going on out there. YouTube has been acting up, especially cutting out at very odd moments. Made me wonder if more monitoring of online activity has happened. I would say a big yes to that. And interesting because I also noticed it on Facebook. And it makes me almost sick to my stomach that, we are being watched in this way. To what end, right? We have this very authoritarian sort of energy going on out there in leaderships around the world. And it feels very, very much like something that needs to be transformed, right? We got to get rid of that kind of power structure. All right, so question, do we combine our natal placement signs with the transiting signs? In a very real way, yes, Christine, because what happens with so you have a sign, let's say Scorpio, let's just pick on Scorpio for a minute, and maybe you have planets there by birth, right? So, and let's just put that in the 10th house. I'm making that up. I don't know for sure where it is in your chart. So you have this set of planets in the sign of Scorpio in your 10th house. So we know there's a lot of transformation, energy, intensity, and passion going on in the 10th house of career and profession. Okay. That's just from birth. But now as a planet is transiting through Scorpio, and in this case, we have Mercury in Scorpio, we have Mars in Scorpio, we have the Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio. Each one of your planets that are natally in Scorpio are getting hit by those transiting planets and bringing up evolutionary potential, bringing up challenges, bringing ease and grace in something, opening up opportunities for you for transformation energy, for you to express your passion, for you to dive deeper into something, to investigate deeper, to reflect deeper with more contemplation, perhaps, as that is kind of the nature of Scorpio. It's the detective, right? The investigator. So yes, you need to know both, right? That's why I always say have your natal chart with you when we talk about astrology, because as planets are transiting through, it can trigger events or opportunities in your own life, right? Based on that. So hopefully that answers your question. If not, let me know. Let's see, 42, my Chiron, face fuchsia flower shape. Face fuchsia flower shape. I don't know what that means. Sorry. But if you have Chiron at the 42, one of your biggest wounds would be about bringing things to completion, knowing when enough is enough, knowing when to bring something to an end, whether that's a relationship, a job, you name it, right? So that could be a struggle for you, J-Lo. Weird weather and solar flares might be a part as well, indeed. Saturday's energy suggests to keep peaceful and calm no matter what. Breathe. Keep in balance. Remember that square from Sun to Jupiter. You don't want to overdo it, right? You need to stay within some kind of limits. The conserve your energy feel of Pluto, the endurance and the grounding energy of completions, all playing out this weekend together. And let's see what else. You're welcome. It was an emoji. Oh, okay, gotcha. Lots of Scorpio in the 7th and Aquarius in the 10th. All right, so Christine, for you, that scorpionic energy is playing with your relationships and partnerships, right? Also, I always, besides the relationships themselves, think of that seventh house in your chart as the mirror for you, right? Because the relationships are showing you the truth about you and how you're showing up and how you're judging yourself. If you're seeing these beautiful, peaceful, harmonious relationships, then that's a reflection for you. If you're seeing relationships where you're being judged, or maybe you're the one doing the judging, then it's also the reflection of what's going on for you, right? So relationship mirrors. That's what I think of that seventh house. Okay. Let's draw a couple of cards. I know it's 9 o'clock and I do got to get going. And fortunately or unfortunately, I have the fairy tale heroine deck. I know that was the last deck I used, but it's sitting here next to me and I can't really reach the others right now. So we're going to use this deck and see what the fairy tale heroines have to tell us about the energies for this weekend. And, ooh, this one looks interesting. It says the locked room. The locked room. Card number 12, which is a 3. The locked room. Okay, let's read about that. So I'm going to have to figure out where she is in this deck. And she's not a set of tools. Tasks? Nope. She's a place, I bet. Yes, page 78. Here we go. So, curiosity killed the cat, or so the old saying tells us, but in fairy tales, it isn't always so. In the story of Bluebeard, the curious heroine risks everything when she opens the door of a locked room and finds a bloody chamber. After the aristocrat Bluebeard gives his wife the keys to all the doors in his castle, but forbids her to open one of them, she disobeys his order and so risks angering him when he finds out what she's done. And yet, the knowledge she gains from discovering the brutal deaths that he visited on his former wives also enables her to escape that same fate. In insisting on opening the door to the locked room, the heroine was listening to her intuition. She'd sensed from the beginning of their marriage that something was wrong, and that not everything about her husband was exactly as it seemed. But secrets are complicated things, and uncovering them will always have consequences. Whether those consequences are a help or a hindrance will depend on the ability of the heroine, who stands on the threshold of knowledge, to listen to and act upon the whispers of her intuition. Is there a secret at the heart of your relationships? What does your intuition tell you about the ways forward? I see a lot of today's themes wrapped up in this card. The locked room, card number 12, which is a 3. All right, guys. It was great to be back with you today. I will see you all on Monday, where we'll take a look ahead at the week, which includes a new moon, and I'm excited about sharing that with you all. So have a great weekend. Much love to you all. Bye for now.